Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Spar&Brawl. Hope you're having a decent day. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Sam, and we're back with another Iran brief. So, Sam, I'm just going to throw it back to you, and yeah, tell us what updates you have for us today concerning Iran.
Sure. So in this brief, we try to cover the geopolitics of Iran and what that all contains, and sometimes internal politics of Iran. But today's episode is just mostly going to be dominated by one topic, and that's the topic that People's Mujahedin of Iran, also known as MEK, that's their acronym, better known as that. They are just to give a tiny overview. They're like a Marxist Islamist organization. Their leader is this lady called Maryam Rajavi, wife of the former leader Masoud Rajavi, who nobody knows where his whereabouts or whether he's alive or not. He hasn't been seen in public for more than 20 years. And the organization is definitely Marxist in its outlook, and the female leader they have wears the hijab and all that. So it's a very, very weird combination of things, and it's largely considered a terrorist organizations, but by many countries it was largely considered terrorist organizations until about 10, 20 years ago, when the whole nuclear issue with Iran started. They were the ones that kind of basically told the international community about the nuclear program. And since then, they have heavily, they've had financial backing, and nobody knows from where. People guess it comes from Israel and Saudi Arabia, but there's no evidence or hard evidence to prove that. We do know, and there is evidence for that, that back in 80s and 90s, they were being supported by Saddam, and their camp was there until Americans invaded, and their camp is now in Albania, if I'm not mistaken. And they in the Iran, the one of the reasons why they're this political organization, but they're viewed as a cult because there was all these weird things that happen in them that kind of reminds me of like the cults in the US that, you know, like Vaco siege was with Darius, not Darius, Kurosh something, Cyrus something. You know, he would have his the top members divorce their wives, and he would marry them, if I'm not mistaken, or that was the story that was largely told. And the members were not allowed to contact their family if the family members weren't members of the organization. So it was viewed as a terrorist organization and very culty, very cultish, very leader oriented. They would burn themselves in front of embassies and stuff. So very cultish. And then during the Iran-Iraq war, there is a whole history of them. They were one of the major forces behind the revolutions. They get sidelined, then they take up arms, they start terrorist activities and kill a lot of officials of Islamic Republic, and then they get wiped out. And then I don't know, in what most Iranians consider to be one of the biggest betrayals in Iranian history, they side with Saddam against Iran during the Iran-Iraq war. And that kind of, in terms of popularity, they are very low in Iran, almost nothing. And they held a, I'll get back to that with some evidence about that, by the way. I'm not just pulling shit out of my ass. They held a meeting in Albania, which was they have these conferences once or twice a year in which major global political officials tend to appear. They had a conference or meeting a couple of years ago in which the former Saudi Minister of Intelligence appeared. This time they had Mike Pompeo appearing virtually online, as well as the Prime Minister of Slovenia, whose name I'm gonna sadly butcher, but I hope Yanis Janša, and they both appeared. Yanis Janša's speech was mostly focused on political prisoners and that type of thing. Mike Pompeo was very clear that America should be completely against Iran. We should not welcome them back in the Iranian community, and we should, they supported the calls from the MEK leader, Maryam Rajavi, that Iranian president, Iranian leader, Iranian officials all should be put on trial for crimes against humanity and genocide. I mean, there are a lot of things they should be put on crimes for, but genocide, anyways. And I would say that the meeting, I mean, my position on this organization is quite clear. I think that I've discussed it by them and their members, but I think you see the meeting, their speech by their so-called leader, extremely rude, extremely like on what it's just the language they use, the way they talk. It's like like what is this like
Who was
Harlem
her
in
target? Who was her
1960s?
target? Like Israeli right
Yeah,
wingers?
so no,
Yeah.
their target is supreme leader and Iranian government, Islamic Republic.
No, I mean like
But
their
the way,
target
like
audience when she's giving this speech, you know? I mean, besides that,
their
like
target audience are, I think that's what I get to the point that I guess their target is the disillusioned people of Iran that are just disillusioned with everything to do with this country and this regime. But their main target is their own fan, because it's a very much a very small cult and
yeah.
they're all together. But now getting to the fact that I don't think they're very popular, even though they have carried out terrorist attacks more than anyone and all that. They do have a network, they do have money. But an expert, Iranian expert, that is, by the way, anti-regime activist in America, I think, he pointed out that during the last 20 years, we have had so many protests in Iran, and we haven't had a single time that the name of this organization has been brought up. We had monarchists, we had communists, we had liberals, we had Islamists, all kinds of protests.
Or the Green
Not
Movement,
a single group ever. The Green Movement, well, that's okay. The Green Movement, all that, or even we have so many other protests for environment, for all of that. Not a single time that this group has been organically supported. And a lot of people point out, this is something I've seen in foreign countries, but I don't have evidence to prove it. So maybe I'm wrong. But other experts also on Iranian channels pointed out that you see that a lot of people that come in front of embassies and shout and protest, they are not Iranians. They have a lot of money. If I'm sure a lot of other organizations, if they had their money, they would do the same. But so in short, it's the fact that they sided with Iraqi regime in Iran-Iraq war. And then when you had the original, like about 25 years ago, like protest of students in Iran, they sided with the Islamic Republic, saying that those students are a bunch of liberal like dicks, and they should be like us. And I think even in protests later on, these they never supported any protest movement till very last 2-3 years. They're really shifting their whole image and all that. But yeah, it was just and by the way, Zarif, Iran protested these actions. They recalled the ambassador of Slovenia, and they contacted European Union's foreign secretary, foreign minister, whatever, had a talk with him. And yeah, it was just, I think this is organizations that, in my view, I mean, feel free to do a Google search. Beyond a doubt, a terrorist organization, killed innocent people, kind of a sort of cult, like a Jonestown cult, or even Jonestown cult was probably better than them. So disgusting.
I mean, I think if your guest is Mike Pompeo,
it's a shame.
If your primary guest is Mike Pompeo, I think that says a lot already. Most sane people understand what that means, but yeah.
Sure. And no, and yeah, exactly. And it's a shame that US is now, this is an organization that I think till 2020, till 25 years ago was considered a terrorist organization and listed as a terrorist organization in the US. But now they have John Bolton and Rudy Giuliani and Mike Pompeo as their supporters. So it's a big shame, I think.
But all people who are no longer in government, though, so, I mean, they all, I mean, I know
Yeah, but
before they
there's
were in
a good
government
chance they're
and
gonna
there's just,
come back.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, true.
Or
Yeah,
people like Mike Pompeo is not the individual; he represents Christian right.
yeah.
So, anyways, but yeah, so
Oh,
that was a
interesting.
big
Super
deal in a
awesome.
way. Yeah, and yeah, but definitely do your own Google search on this because yeah, I'm very biased on this for sure. And then we can sort of focus back on nuclear talks and issues regarding that. Which regarding that, you had a positive news from my perspective that the U.S. exempted some of Iranian money to be from blockage in Japan and South Korea. So Iran has quite a lot of money blocked there from before from the oils that have been sold and whatnot. And those monies now have been exempt from some Iranian sanctions, and now the money can be transferred to Iran. So that was a bit of a good news. You also had the final report of the current government of Rouhani government, who's handing over, I think in a week or so, to the Iranian parliament. In that they sort of they say that basically internal divisions did not allow the deal to be revived during the current government, which is a bit of a sort of they're making they're sort of a sniping at the opposition and the incoming government and saying that you were going to do the same thing, but you didn't want us to sort of revive it. You didn't want us to get the credit, so that's why it didn't happen within this time frame. It's not our fault, which is, I think there's some truth to that, but then again, it questions your own competency, doesn't it? So it's like saying, yeah, I couldn't overcome my opposition internally. Well, yeah, that's on you as much as on them, not to excuse their actions. And then you had Rouhani gave a speech. He gives speeches every other day now, and he also sort of made a similar remark in that the chance to revive the deal was taken from this government, which seems to imply the same thing. So yeah, these are the latest things about nuclear talks. But I assume after the new government comes to power in Iran, then suddenly you're gonna have quite a lot of changes, because frankly, this is something that a lot of people probably don't consider a lot newsworthy and that important structurally, but I think this is probably more even important than nuclear talks. But from next month in Iran, they're going to introduce taxes on empty houses. In Iran, by the way, unlike UK and a lot of countries, we don't have council tax or a house tax, right? People live in their houses. They pay a very tiny amount of like maintenance costs for pipes and shit, but it's like literally nothing. So you don't have anything like a council tax anymore. And now from next month, they're introducing taxes on empty houses, because you have this thing in Iran that super rich people buy loads of houses. It's the best investment you can make, because house prices every 5 years, they suddenly jump 20% or 40%. It's just like a slightly above inflation usually.
While money loses a lot of value almost most of the time.
Yeah, but then again, money is also getting the interest rate in the bank. So it's a bit weird. It's all about time. That's all. So sometimes it's better to be money, sometimes it's better to be liquid, sometimes it's better to be a house. But like the new governments coming in is going to be basically at the same time as increased oil sales, increased oil money revenue coming in due to relaxed banking sanctions. It's probably we're going to see some form of revival of the Barjam deal. And then
that's the nuclear deal.
And there has been a growth in the manufacturing and all that. Not all of it, by the way, positive. Agricultural output is up, but it's causing probably in 5 years we're going to see major environmental catastrophes. But some in term other things, some manufacturing is very positively has improved. So, and most analysts are expecting a 2%, 2.5% growth for the next coming years. Nothing crazy, but it's just, yeah, it's going to be interesting. And this house tax, depending on, because we have a lot of good laws in Iran, but they don't get enforced. But if this one gets enforced, I think this could be a game changer.
I see. Okay. Wow. Very interesting stuff. Super. Anything else to add?
No, that's it. It's been a bit of a slow thing geopolitical wise, so maybe that's why I sort of went in internal politics there. But no, that's about it. I hope, yeah, just double check everything I say. Very biased about that or political organization.
Okay, no. All right. That was really awesome. All right. So if anybody has any questions, comments, criticisms, please leave them below and we'll make sure to get to them. If not, please like and subscribe and we'll see you in our next video. Thank you.